Dean, for that little introduction. So, on December 22nd, 2016, I tested positive for Huntington's disease and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder type 1. Huntington's disease is an incurable and terminal neurodegenerative disorder that affects the brain and has been described as ALS, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's disease combined. It breaks down into 3 different categories of affliction: cognitive, motor, and psychiatric. When carrying the dominant Huntington gene, your children have a 50% chance of being at risk for developing the disease, just like flipping a coin. Huntington's disease causes involuntary jerking or writhing movements, slow or abnormal eye movements, difficulty with speech or swallowing, difficulty organizing, prioritizing, or focusing on tasks, depression, insomnia, loss of bodily functions, and many other debilitating symptoms. My prognosis? Death by around age 45 to my early 50s, based off my genetic test repeat. Bipolar disorder type 1 is a classic or textbook manic depressive illness with serious episodes of both mania and depression. For me, it is an ongoing battle between severe periodic depressive symptoms, grandiose ideas, and a manic work ethic where I will work hours on end to complete a task without taking any breaks, unable to sleep without its completion. Throughout my life, neurodegenerative diseases and psychiatric disorders have plagued my family. My mother fights agoraphobia, a fear of places and situations that might cause panic, and has extreme anxiety. On the other hand, my father combats acromegaly, a disease affecting a mere 20,000 U.S. patients a year, which occurs when the pituitary gland in the brain forms a tumor and produces too much growth hormone. My father also has Huntington's disease. Bipolar, anxiety, a degenerative hip disease, and depression run on my mom's side, with Huntington's disease, depression, chronic and degenerative back pain, and migraines running on my father's. I had always known something was wrong, a feeling I could not express to my family, doctors, or friends. It felt like a locked door hidden deep away within my brain. I knew it was there, and I knew it was hidden behind it. But the only way to know for sure and to confirm my suspicions that I had Huntington's disease was to go to the hospital and to get a script to be genetically tested. I wanted to know if the current tentative path I envisioned for my future self as a 19-year-old at the time was realistic, or if my life was going to be cut short and I would have to restructure myself accordingly. I needed to know. After about 2 weeks of unbearable waiting, I received a medical report in the mail. At first, I did not want to open it. I knew it was inside that letter. I knew what my results were. I also knew, however, that the minute I opened that report from LabCorp and saw my results for a positive genetic predisposition to Huntington's disease, my entire life was going to change. There was a brief sense of guilt, not for getting the test, but for the pain it would inflict on my family. I was ready for these results. I was born ready for these results. Yet my dad and the rest of my family had founded their lives on attempting to circumvent this genetic test, attempting to circumvent having to face reality and acknowledge that my dad had, in fact, passed the Huntington's disease gene down to at least one of his children, and that my younger brother and older sister are also at risk. To this day, my dad refuses to acknowledge any connection to or treatment for Huntington's disease, though it was his dominant mutant gene that passed the disease down to me. My brain was shooting in every direction after learning about the test results. I wanted to learn more about the disease and the latest in research. I wanted to understand how a disease that was discovered by George Huntington in 1872 still has no effective treatment options over a century later. There was no way this was the case. I wanted to learn more from the community and get involved. Were there really no other options except to just accept my fate and die an intractable, slow, painful, and excruciatingly devastating death? No. As Margaret Mead said, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I threw away my old life. I no longer cared about the petty, frivolous, materialistic things in life anymore. My focus became clear. I'm going to do everything in my power to help find a cure for Huntington's disease or die trying. My finite time would be spent towards finding new ways to help and better humanity, to curiously learn what injustices are occurring and how to best advocate and fight back against them. Knowing that Huntington's disease terminates every single precious life afflicted midlife or earlier propelled me into a maturing cycle that can only be described with one word: enlightening. Through my research, I discovered that a genetic modification therapy called CRISPR-Cas9 has researchers' attention worldwide. This technology could possibly be used to cure Huntington's disease, with some expecting that it can cure all genetic diseases. And we currently have enough resources and the technological know-how to turn it into a reality. Cas9 is an enzyme used to penetrate and replace exact segments in our DNA sequence through CRISPR gene editing. There's one problem with CRISPR. Only 200,000 people are at risk for Huntington's disease in North America, and even fewer companies have access to this new revolutionary gene editing technology. This and heavy restrictions placed on the technology in America have made access and research quite limited in scope. Huge companies like Monsanto, Bayer, Adidas Madison, the Broad Institute, and others are patenting this technology and ensuring that globally they're the only ones who can use it in order to profit. There are not enough people with Huntington's disease. There is not enough money to be made off the lives of the unappreciated few. We are price tags, and our lives are not worthy enough of being prioritized for a cure. This infuriated me. One night, I decided I was going to see someone I had been in exchange with in New York City who I thought could answer my questions about the inner workings of society and Huntington's disease. I had chosen to drive to New York and stay with extended family in the middle of a feud with my nuclear family and against my parents' wishes, even though I was 19 years old. My mother called the police and told them that I was a runaway and that I had depression and was taking medication. This was her way of protecting me, ensuring the quickest capture and return home. I do not think my mom's true intentions were malicious, not even temporarily. It was more of a power struggle, proving that even if I did not listen to her, a simple embellished call to the police could stop me from doing things that she did not want me doing. When I saw the first police car, I panicked because I was unaware my mother had called the police. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911, something my parents had always taught me to do if I was not doing anything against the law, but an officer tries pulling me over. My brain and my gut both instantaneously shot into survival mode. My amygdala had taken over. I conceived I was being chased because I was pursuing a plan of action formed against the injustices created against society and their founders, beginning with finding a cure for Huntington's disease. I pulled over on the side of the road, not coming to a complete stop while remaining on the phone with 911 and frantically giving the license plate number to the responder. The voice on the phone told me it was a real cop and to pull over. I remained skeptical. I have seen too many movies just like this. I did not know who I could trust. Cops are just people with badges and guns. People are inherently corruptible. With all of my courage and acting out of fear for my life, I lowered my head below my old beige leather headdress, decreasing my chances of getting shot in the head. And with all the strength in my right leg, I floored the pedal, going in excess of 100 miles an hour on I-95. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. I was in a trance. All prior feelings and emotions flew out the window. My body became numb. The only thought running between my neural pathways was to survive. I did not know where I was going, but I had a primal instinct to flee. I had so much I wanted to accomplish, so much I wanted to help with, and I thought this was my final fight, the holy grail of good versus evil. 1 cop, 2 cops, 3 cops, 6 cops, 10 cops, and more in sight. I was panicking. I cried to the 911 responder, asking why this was happening to me. I cried that the car was in my name. I paid for it with my hard-earned money. I had a valid license and was not speeding at the time of first being flagged down. Not knowing that my mother was the reason why a BOLO, police talk for be on the lookout, was sent out for me, I was confused. I was traumatized. This was not who I was. I am not someone who runs from the police for no good reason, fearing for my life, with countless cop cars buzzing behind me. But I also am not someone who gives up when I know what I'm doing is right and rational. I am not someone who steps down in the face of mountainous stress and pressure. I do the exact opposite. I rise, I impress, and I prove wrong. My car wound up finally giving out after a more than 6-mile police chase. I tried navigating around a roadblock, but my balding tires could not bear the pressure any longer and began to pop, one by one. I realized that this was it. This was the moment, or so I thought while having my first and only manic episode to date, that I was to face my fate. My ideas, my thoughts, and my revelations were all going to die with me. Out of last resort desperation, I swerved safely into oncoming traffic, put my emergency brakes on, faced the guns and smoke, and kept my hands up pleading for mercy and demanding answers. I thought in that moment that if I were to get shot, the people in cars that I forced to stop in the oncoming traffic lane would at least see me get shot with dignity, with my hands up inside my car, and without having caused any harm. The officers rushed to my car, guns out, sights set. They pulled me out of my car and demanded I lay motionless on the ground and tell them any belongings that I had in my car that they would need to know about. They clasped cold, hard, metal silver handcuffs onto my wrists, tightly squeezing my blood and my nerves, forcing my right hand to go temporarily numb. I lay there, cursing at all of them for not being able to look me in the eye. I was yelling for answers while attempting not to move anything but my head. Few words were exchanged. It was not until a lieutenant showed up and told me that I was going to be taken to a hospital for an emergency psychological evaluation that I knew what was going on. At first, I still had a paranoid feeling that none of them could be trusted, that the golden badges they wore on their shirts were just handed out to protect America's core corporate interests. Eventually, they situated me in a cop car and handcuffed and stripped me of all materials other than my clothes. I waited for what seemed like eternity for someone to tell me what was next. I was forced involuntarily to stay in Maryland's Harford Memorial Hospital from Wednesday, January 4th to Friday, January 13th, 2017, until a definitive diagnosis was made. I was brought to the hospital by one of the officers who stopped me. Let's call him Officer R. He ensured I made it safely to the hospital. He stayed with me until I was booked upstairs, and he helped me understand what exactly was going on. During this time in the hospital, I had an immense amount of time to think about life, what happened, society, the universe and its complexities, and my future. People staying at the hospital always had different activities planned throughout the day to help us cope with our situations, make goals and find solutions to achieve them, play games to pass time, and to have group therapy sessions to talk things out and help relate to one another. During one of these sessions, we were learning grounding techniques. "Close your eyes," the instructor Lynn said. "Let all doubts and worries fade away. Let your thoughts run freely and do not attempt to judge them as they reach your consciousness. Merely acknowledge that they are there," she continued. I was having trouble doing this. "There are too many thoughts," I said in protest, not trusting in the exercise. Lynn calmly replied, "Then you must choose which ones are most important and bring them to fruition." It was at this exact moment that something came over me. Some grand streak of optimism flew over my head, penetrating even the deepest, most wound-up parts of my subconscious, knocking down any negative thought barriers or self-doubt I had about myself and my condition. I had a potent urge to write my thoughts down, so I grabbed a piece of a brown paper bag. Next, I searched my brain and my heart for what was most important. I pondered deep into what realistic goals I truly wanted to accomplish and what solutions I could create to make it a reality. So there I was, pondering life in all of its beauty during a grounding session in the middle of a psychiatric ward with people in mental conditions much worse and ill-managed than mine on January 10th, 2017, and that's when it hit me. The Huntington's Initiative, I would call it. My 7-step plan to find a cure for Huntington's disease. Its outline is written as follows. Number 1, create a GoFundMe or other form with less money taken out. Number 2, create a description of me, Huntington's disease, and my prognosis. Number 3, create an informative video to raise awareness. Number 4, determine cost of care with transportation. Number 5, research and emphasize stem cell research and gene editing. Number 6, get networked by someone prominent and create a national walk. And lastly, number 7, help create good and unity in the world. This was just the beginning of something great. I was finally untangling the tightly wound web of life, uncovering trails and paths taking me closer and closer to my goal of finding a cure accessible to all. Over the course of 2017, I made great progress. I no longer have a recurring nightmare of being stabbed in the arm with a needle at 6 a.m. every morning to check my lithium levels. I no longer fear that my first schizophrenic roommate in Maryland is going to strangle me in my sleep, something he had muttered to himself on many occasions. I no longer feel trapped in a windowless circle, unable to go anywhere without security cameras tracking my every move. Instead, I tenaciously began getting in touch with researchers, scientists, patient advocates, Huntington's Disease Society of America members, and doctors at Harvard, in Switzerland, in Germany, throughout Europe, and in other parts of Eurasia. I was given the opportunity to have 2 interviews with people involved in genetics, one with genetic counselor Brianne Kirkpatrick, president and founder of Watershed DNA in Crozet, Virginia. In this interview, which aired live on YouTube, we discussed my family and personal history, CRISPR technology, patient advocacy, and the fundamentals of Huntington's disease. My other interview aired live on the radio in Connecticut with rising genetic counselor Kira Deneen and was spent discussing a specific successful genetic clinical trial for Huntington's disease named the IONIS trial. We also discussed patient advocacy, CRISPR technology, and what the current genetic future has in store. This is also available to download as a podcast on iTunes for free. I jumped at everywhere I saw an opportunity to move forward to define a cure for Huntington's disease using gene editing or other methods, no matter how little or grand of a promise it held. Every step forward was a great one. I also finally began reading a book my emergency psychiatrist, Dr. C, recommended to me, Touch with Fire by Kay Jamison. In it, PhD psychiatrist Kay Jamison uncovers hidden links between manic depressive illnesses, like bipolar, and their connections to genius, the artistic temperament, and an ability to focus all of one's energy and consciousness to think in a nonlinear fashion, confusing those unable to do so. Normal brains think in a linear fashion. Thoughts are complete, not fragmented, rather analytical, selective, and sequential. My touch of fire had turned into my superpower. Though manic is the term that my emergency psychiatrist labeled me in the situation as, I label it as visionary expansiveness. Visionaries and revolutionaries are made to be mocked at as fools, while Kardashians and Biebers are made to be superstars and idols in today's age. Though at this point in my life there were many things out of my control and many things that I felt infuriated by, I chose to do my own research. I chose to make my own website to collect donations and raise awareness, having raised over $600, with more fundraisers to come. I chose not to accept no from Western medicine and to profoundly weigh all options available, exhausting each and every one of them to the best of my ability. I have chosen to manage and try to influence the things that I can control. I cannot break down restrictive patents, but I can bring awareness to them. I cannot defeat every single injustice, but I can ensure my voice is heard on every platform possible. I cannot procure a cure on my own, but I can advocate for one and attend conferences worldwide as a keynote patient advocate speaker until one is found. I stopped looking for the can-nots, and I only recognize the can-dos. Yet, even with this positive outlook, there is still one paradox that worries me the most. I have no doubt that sometime in my lifetime, Huntington's disease will be cured. I have already had many conversations with Dr. Nicole DeGlon from Switzerland, who is the first scientist to use CRISPR-Cas9 technology on mice to successfully cure them of future Huntington's disease, which emanates hope. The paradox that worries me most still is society. I worry that those who choose to keep their eyes fixated on the ground beneath them instead of acting on their passions and wildest dreams will never truly realize the life and utopia that they're blissfully leaving behind, because no one can force them to come to that realization other than them themselves. In doing so, people leave all that potential money, fame, success, unity, and their ability to change history to those who already hoard the world's resources all to themselves. One day, January 19th, 2018, at 8:25 p.m., just 12 hours after my genetics podcast with Kira Deneen aired in Connecticut, I received a message on Facebook from someone named BJ View. Hey Antonio, I was just sent your radio interview by my good friend Seth Rockberg. I enjoyed your radio show with Kira so much that I then went to your website and am now listening to your YouTube video with Brianne Kirkpatrick. I am from a Huntington's disease family too. My mother passed away in 2010. Although I tested negative, I have dedicated myself to fight on until a cure is found. I helped start Huntington's Disease Youth Organization.org with a very similar passion to what you have with Huntington's disease. I am Huntington's Disease Youth Organization's current board chair and would love to connect with you to see how we can help your mission. I joyfully replied, I'd be honored to talk with you, thank you so much. I have been praying that someone would be listening to my podcast or see my website to know that anyone is listening. I was so excited I couldn't hold it in. This is our time to show no one should have to carry a price tag, because all lives are priceless. We set a time to talk the following day. BJ and I wound up having an engaging conversation. We talked for over an hour. He admitted he reached out because he felt the same drive, passion, and voice in my interviews that he felt when he first helped establish the organization. He admitted that he believed the organization and scientific community were losing touch with its base and its original purpose, and was open to thoughts and ideas, even suggesting opportunities to present findings in youth groups at conferences in Los Angeles, Vienna, Austria, and Denver, Colorado. We talked outside just the scope of Huntington's disease, also about what I want to do with my life and what possibilities will be open for me the day I am cured of Huntington's disease and have the ability to focus my efforts elsewhere. He recommended I sought out a job marketing or lobbying for public policy change, somewhere he felt I would be extremely valuable. This continuing lifelong journey has taught me many lessons, mainly that I am and always will be my strongest advocate. Yet, one of the most important lessons I have learned throughout this entire process was to stop waiting for someone to do the job for me and to put a plan into action myself. The rewards will be much greater and appreciated. Though this began as a painful diagnosis, I am motivated and inspired to change the outlook for this debilitating disease. With enough awareness, collaboration, and support, we can and we will find a cure. Step up, speak out, and fight back. Be the change you envision. Create a legacy to be proud of and take part in helping create a lasting positive impact on something you are passionate about. As the inspiring Paulo Coelho in The Alchemist says, to realize one's destiny is a person's only obligation. That's it. Does anybody have any questions? Well, if you don't have any now, at your tables there are Huntington's Initiative cards where you all can view my website and my research and learn more about the disease and the latest in research and technology. And my email is at the bottom of that website, and I'm all ears for any suggestions. And yeah, thank you guys for having me be here tonight. I'm glad I could share my story with you.
Antonio, thank you for that thoughtful and inspiring presentation. It was just truly terrific. I'm told we are supposed to have musicians here, but I do not see the musicians. Oh, they are here. That's great. I didn't recognize you guys. If you could stand up, introduce yourself to the audience, because I don't have a